Welcome to Keep Hustling, where we are going past the why to get to the how. I'm your host, the always hustling Aaron Gordon, aka NY Risk Advisor, aka Mr. Keep Hustling. In this podcast, we will be diving deep into the professional and personal successes of our guests to find out how they hustled through the most difficult times in their life and their development to achieve the success they've gotten to today. So buckle up for what hopes to be an amazing ride. And of course, now and always, keep hustling. Welcome to Keep Hustling with my guest, Brett Young. Thanks for being here, Brett.
What is up, dude? Great to see you.
It's good to see you. It's good to hear you. It's great because today we have a Florida-esque weather day here in New York in the mid-70s in October.
It's amazing.
So a lot of the shade that you could have thrown at me is not coming today. So I feel pretty good about this call happening today at this moment.
So this is a Sunshine State podcast here. Let's rock. I love that.
Sunshine and sunshine. So I know a lot about you. I know your story. It's an amazing one. And I know that it will inspire the hustle of our listeners. So take us back. What do we need to know about the personal and professional upbringing that shaped Brett Young to who he is today?
Oh man. Let's see. I'll give you kind of a cliff notes. I grew up in a lower middle class household, and had the privilege of watching my parents become, probably in the later teens as I was going to college, more in the upper middle class from an socioeconomic status. So I watched my family go from some challenging times to not so challenging times, and I was able to kind of witness the things they did, what that looked like, the good, the bad, how they did it. Paid attention. I got some really good lessons from them. They were always very transparent with just career advice, philosophy, ways of thinking, some of which I borrowed a lot from, some of which I didn't. It was a very corporate type structure in my household. That's how they obviously ascended to the next level in their progression as far as career path is concerned. My mom was a teacher, and she was an incredible teacher when I was in I was in elementary school. She was actually a teacher there, and then she became a principal. And then she was able to get a really cool opportunity to start Florida Virtual School, which became the first online virtual education platform in the country. And it became a massive organization with thousands of employees with a global reach. And she still to this day is considered the godmother of virtual education. And she was the CEO from that company. So to go from a teacher and to take that type of experience into a CEO role is one of the coolest stories ever. And I got to watch that transition. And one of the biggest components I learned from that journey is she was a culture freak. She was talking culture before even people knew what culture was. And she built this company with centered around the student, centered around the children and the kids that they served. And it was a really, really cool cohesive organization that she built. So I got to watch that, which is really, really cool. And then my dad was in sales. I watched him go from, entry level sales from IBM to become vice president of the largest division in the country with Sprint and Embark and the telecommunications business. And I got to watch, his progression in his career to perform at a really, really high level, leading a really big sales team. And then something happened for me that changed my life forever as my dad got let go, and he was downsized at the pinnacle of his career, riding high, doing things he never thought he would do and living the dream. And candidly, my dad was not necessarily the most soft, empathetic, guiding hand throughout my life. He was tough on us, and later in his career, you could tell that he really wasn't enjoying what he did. And so sometimes he would take it out on us, and he just wasn't necessarily happy. And so I watched the downsides of that, and not having the autonomy and not having the joy and not doing something that you love, doing something strictly for the money, and what that does to a family unit and to your kids and to you. And then I watched him, during the Great Recession, get downsized and in an instant lose your identity and be, uh, y- you know, 50s plus riding high to now unemployed. And what do you do? And what does that look like? And then I watched him take a path, and he went into financial planning. It was something he always wanted to do. He was a finance guy, very, very capable, had helped us save, taught me a lot of different things in investing. And he went and literally was knocking on doors. He was in a full, I remember coming back home from college, and he had been he'd been downsized, and I remember coming home, and he was in a white Oxford shirt with a tie, and it was midsummer in Orlando, 90 degrees, and he's knocking on doors, introducing himself, with Edward Jones. And so I watched this humility pie get thrown at him at the height of his career, and it was. He would, if he was on this call, he would tell you it's the best thing that ever happened to him. I feel like I got my dad back. He went from, just a completely different person, and he's built that business now up to where it's very successful. But I watched him kind of climb back and find his own identity in the midst of all that chaos. So that was really cool to me during that. It taught me a lot about what path I wanted to go. It taught me a lot about how, what did I want for my career, what I want for my life. So watching those two and their journeys, I think, has shaped a lot of kind of where we are today. But yeah, so that was kind of my background, my upbringing, and kind of what I learned, what I liked, what I didn't like. But it was a huge blessing, and I had a complete advantage because those two people are absolutely amazing human beings, and I learned a lot from them.
There's so much to dissect there, and I'm going to push back on a couple things because I can see where that inspired your hustle. I want to work backwards. I want to start with your dad and then work back to. Took some notes on two very interesting things. I think you said one about your father and one about your mother, and that is you said that when your father got downsized, he lost his identity. And I don't know if that was intentional,
Mm-hmm.
but and if it was, or even if it wasn't, uh, when you were growing up or when you saw that happen, what did that mean to you when you put those two pieces together? That sales profession and that grind became his identity, and then having to reshape that.
Yeah, I think, for us, he was always just dad. And so, but I think for him, um, you know, uh, later as he had more success, I think he kind of lost sight of that a little bit. And, we have the tendency to have ego start to creep into what we do. And, we kind of get lost sometimes in the successes that we have. So, I kind of watched that slowly happen for him. But I think it was morally centric around the fact that he did not enjoy what he was doing at all. And he had these golden handcuffs to where he wanted to leave, he wanted to do something else, but he just didn't feel he had enough courage or enough logic. There wasn't enough logic for him to do that. And
Did he share that with you along the way?
he
Like,
only
I'm gonna.
shared it. He only shared it afterwards. Isn't that funny how life works? You only share after you've overcome the obstacle, not while you're in the midst of the obstacle. Sometimes that's because you don't know you're in the middle of the obstacle, but some of it has to do with the fact that maybe I don't know if I'm gonna get around it or get over it. So yeah, that happened afterwards.
I find it fascinating because we, as the children, obviously our parents, those of us who are privileged to grow up with parents who are very influential in their lives, they have an impact on your life. Meaning, when he said it to you later in life, I assume you were like thinking back, yeah, I kind of remember him coming back from the sales grind, and maybe he wasn't really happy, or and then it's interesting because you hark back to that and you realize that those seeds might have been planted in you, and now it's kind of the pictures coming together as we mature and we create our own
Right.
identities,
Right.
but yet we went through it with them, or
Yep.
that had an impact as it was happening. I know that
Yep.
you said that your mother was a culture freak. I know you're a culture freak, so I'm going
Totally.
to segue to that, commenting on something that you mentioned about her, which is, and this to me is, when you talk about the ultimate keep hustling story, I mean, who, when they become a teacher, could ever dream of becoming the CEO of an education company? I think that a teacher could think about becoming an administrator in a school, right? The principal thing, a person can be doing it long enough and be good at that craft, and then the school system wants them to have influence on the younger teachers. So that makes sense to me. But then it's like, how do you jump from being a teacher, which I guess is the CEO of a classroom, but I think we can agree being a school teacher and running a company are two totally different things.
Right.
And yet you didn't say, which I'm glad you didn't say, because this is all about open and honest conversation, that she was the smartest person, which she probably was, or had the best, most business savvy, which she probably didn't, if I'm guessing, as being what she did. And yet focusing on culture and, as you said, putting the student first, i.e., in this case, the consumer first in her
Right.
business, it could have been in any business, catapulted her to a place in her career that she probably never could have. Forget about like, oh, I start this company, it can grow. Never, like in a different universe.
Right. I mean, think about it. It was dial up then, so it's like it took you however long just to even get on the internet. You're going to actually do you're going to do a school on this dial up thing that takes, I mean, it's just, it's mind blowing to me, the fact that you have enough foresight to make that happen. And so, yeah, I mean, she didn't have the business acumen. Like she didn't have the huge pedigree. She was relatable, and therefore she was a good leader. And because she was relatable to teachers, because she had done it, she was able to compel them to take an action or to believe in a mission and to contribute and to collaborate and to work together. And I take a lot from that, because leadership is not about having all the answers. Leadership is not about being the smartest person in the room. Leadership is not about having the business acumen. Leadership is about being human enough to compel people to unify and work collectively together. And if you can figure out that everyone has their own spin and on their own reason and their own style, but to me, that is the ultimate competitive advantage in every organizational craft. Anytime you're collectively moving people to do some sort of outcome, there's just, to me, only one primary skill that exceeds all the rest, and it is your ability to get everyone to work together. And she was extremely good at that.
Did you think that that's what the founders saw in her? To lead her to that. By the way, and then we got to get into the leap of faith that she took,
Yeah.
leaving the school system stable, become a principal in a school system, relatively stable career path. And I didn't even put it together that it was in the early stages of the internet. That's wild.
Yeah, it's totally wild, man. It's
Today
insane.
you say, "Oh, I'm starting an education company and bringing digital learning to wherever."
Right.
You're like, "Okay, that makes sense."
Literally, people would like look at us with. I mean, I was so young that I didn't necessarily think twice about it. I was like, okay, cool. I guess that's, like I was young, but like everyone's looking, going, what are you talking about? That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Like, talk about ridicule. Like, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. There's no way you could take a brick and mortar education school and do it all on this experiment, internet thing. Like, right? Like, so yeah, I think.
And by the way, you're a fool for giving up your stable income and whatever to do that.
Yeah,
and
absolutely. And it was, so this was and to give context, this was a state-run program. So the state of Florida decided that they were going to do this. So obviously her, connections through the deal, she just interviewed for it, and it'd be great. I don't want to put words in my mouth in mouth of what they saw in her, but I believe after seeing the whole story play out and being there along the way, I believe they saw somebody who had a significant passion for helping the student, and somebody who had obviously been a teacher, so they can relate, they've done it, but also had the administrative experience from a principal. But ultimately, just the passion for learning, the passion for the school system, the passion for the student getting the short end of the stick. I think they saw in her that their mission of what they were trying to do really aligned with her personal mission.
And her ability to hustle and grind through that, because that's her goal, would be that much more passionate and pushing through the struggle, because I assume this is
Yep.
I didn't even know this. This is like all these people are probably thinking everybody in the world thinks we're totally insane.
Absolutely.
Like, just like,
yeah,
half the students probably didn't even have computers in their house.
right.
Half of the consumers
Right.
to get to that.
Correct.
So you take these lessons, and you you had a windy road, or somewhat of a windy road, to get to be uh, where you are at Urban Young now, an amazing organization that I'm privileged to work with. I don't want to say every day, but at least every week, and learn from.
Yeah, the man.
What was the pivotal moment for you that kind of where it clicked and you said, I'm going to do this, and how I'm going to do this?
Yeah, it was actually prior to the insurance business. So when I was throughout this process, obviously this is cool. You go through back through childhood, I haven't had a chance to share this on a podcast. So this is unique, cool content. But um, throughout that process, I'm in a corporate house, right? I've got a CEO mother who's gone from, you know, uh, kindergarten teacher to CEO of one of the largest digital learning organizations in the world. And then I have my dad, who has gone from sales, professional to vice president of sales for the entire Eastern Seaboard in a large publicly traded telecommunications company, right? So the track in which that you be successful in my house is a corporate track. It's not an entrepreneurial track. It is a corporate track. You follow that 401k, save the money, invest the deal. 65, you're done, you retire. See you later. Maybe you get a pension if you go the government route. Maybe you go the private sector. But you go to college, you get a degree, you follow the track, and you look for the next promotion. Right? That was my upbringing, and I knew early on that that was not something that I was going to do. I had always been entrepreneurial. I had always been creating value, and it was disguised in me trying. Early in my career, I was a kid. Early, I thought it was me. I just didn't want to work. I didn't have a very good work ethic. I didn't enjoy work at all. But I was always doing some hustle side projects. I was always hustling on the side. I had all these little businesses that really weren't businesses, but they were just forms of ways to make money. And I worked hard on those. I hustled on those. But as far as like the traditional work thing, man, I just never, it always was hard for me. And I remember going to my dad and be like, man, I think there's something wrong with me. I think I'm in college at the time. And I said, I think there's something wrong with me. He goes, what are you talking about? I was like, I genuinely hate work. I genuinely hate it. I don't understand. Now, to give context to this day, I love work. I work my ass off, and it's the best thing in my life. This is my life. There is no such thing as home life and work life. They're all together to me. It's just life. I fucking love it, right? So that is very different than the old Brett, because the old Brett was trying to figure out how to not go in. He was figuring out a way to, it was just a completely different person. And he said, hey, man, why don't you go interview a bunch of people and find out about their career, what they like, what they don't like, and just go talk to people. And so at this point, I'm doing a couple different businesses. I'm in college. I'm making money on my own. I'm going from job to job to, and just because I'm supposed to be working or whatever, and I'm just not catching a lot of traction. And I go meet a couple different people during that time. And during that time, I had been introduced to the network marketing business. And so this is perfect because I had all these other little businesses. I'm like, oh, this is fun. This is cool. This is exciting. I meet some mentors that were very compelling, that were very polished. And I start to learn this business, and I was like, man, this is really cool. I like this a lot. This is about team building. This is about personal development. And this was a very distinct change in my life. I was introduced to, I never read a book in my life. And at this point, I would be fair to say that I was lazy. It would be easy to call me lazy at this point. And I was introduced to these principles and philosophies and thoughts about developing as a person and becoming more. If you want to earn more, you have to become more. And through that process, I started to learn, and I started to read, and I started to be compelled to, become more. And it changed my life forever. It was like the door was closed for me and someone had opened it. I hadn't walked through it yet, but I could see down the hall now, and I could see, wow, there's more to this. I don't just have to graduate and go to school and get this job at the end of the deal. Like, I can create whatever it is I want. I just have to figure out what that is. And so it wasn't necessarily about the business itself. It was about the fact of these principles and these ideas were being installed, that when I look back at it, my parents were installing the same overline basic success principles, very biblical, ancient success, good moral principles, but they just weren't done in a way that helped me understand and click. And when I learned this stuff and it related to business and it all clicked, I started realizing that, okay, wow, there's some patterns here. And this gave me the belief and the confidence that I could go out and create something. So during that time, one of the guys I interviewed was an insurance agent. He was a property and casualty insurance agent. He had a lot of success, had a press career, had a very large agency here in Orlando. He just exited probably 2 years ago, and he sat with me for 2.5 hours. And he told me about the insurance business and all the things to it. Now, keep in mind, the network marketing space that I had, I was marketing an insurance product. It was an employee benefit. And he told me some things that blew my mind. He said, man, hey, look, this is a product that everybody needs and wants. They have to buy it from somebody. We know when they buy it. And it has residual income attached to it. They buy it every single year. I took those and said, man, that's incredible. And he goes, it's a pull-through product. People come to us. What you're doing right now is you're pushing this into the marketplace. People don't even know what they need, and you're having to educate them. This is something where you just let people know what you do, and they will inherently, over time, they'll come to you. And I was like, perfect. That was the first component. The second component was the team building, which I knew from working in the network marketing business that one of the eighth wonders of the world is compound growth. And through team building, you can create exponential results, not linear results. So I said, okay, then knowing what I know now, I will never do anything in my life that doesn't have residual income attached to it and doesn't have leverage attached to it, which inherently, to me, the biggest form of leverage is team building. And so those two components, I said, okay, instead of this network marketing space, I'm going to take the same components from a team building, culture, and personal development, which was inherently learning how to lead a voluntary army, and take those and bring it into the property and casualty insurance space, which at that time, that's when Rod and Taylor both came in, my two amazing partners, where we decided, all right, let's take these same components, let's take these core philosophies, these core principles that work, that we did pretty well, and bring it to an industry that doesn't have these progressive ideas, doesn't necessarily have this sexy flair to it, doesn't necessarily have, people aren't going to school like the tech jobs where they walk out and go, man, I want to be an insurance agent, right? Like, it doesn't necessarily have the same sex appeal. And so we said, all right, but the principles that we're teaching, which is the American dream, which is path to unlimited, which is create more, make an impact, a lot of these things that are just the tale of time of what's in it for me, that I can create whatever it is I want as long as I become more, I can earn more. Let's take those components and bring it to a business that's so solid and rock solid from hundreds and hundreds of years. And that was the start of Erb and Young. And that's kind of the two headwinds that came to pass where we started the company in 2011.
I think that's, first of all, I love your story. You know that. I could listen to you tell that all day, every day.
Thanks, man.
What's interesting, and we don't have to get into whether we, as parents, we agree with the current educational system, but what's interesting is that, my wife is a pediatric occupational therapist. And there's a line that she taught me early on, which is occupational therapy helps people with their activities of daily living, i.e. perform their primary functions and be able to do their job. And one of the things that she said to me when we had our first child was the job of I remember I was like, why are we sending this kid to preschool at 2 years old and spending the money, or a play group?
Right.
And she said, her job is to play. And what's amazing is as you get older, and I'm not talking about in preschool or first grade or second grade, but like when you're in college, your job is to study and sit in a classroom. And I was the same way. It almost like forced laziness on me, because it was like, if this was my job,
this sucks.
I would quit. But I wouldn't live on the street and bum around. You know what I'm saying? I wouldn't just like sit and play video games. I would quit and find something that I was passionate about.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So like,
yeah.
So what's interesting is that the most successful people, when that clicks in their mind and they say, this is not impacting my hustle. I'm a hustler. I'm just not a hustler who sits in a classroom and reads books all day. It's like,
See, and I didn't have that foresight. I was, and I don't know if anybody could relate to this that's going to listen to this right now. Is just that like I didn't have enough foresight where you were like, look, I know who I am and this just doesn't fit for me. I was
Nobody
thinking there was
does.
something wrong with me. I was genuinely thinking, what I was scared. I was thinking, what am I going to do in life if I feel like this every day I go to work? I was going to work and I literally dread it and I hate it. And I'm waiting every hour, every minute. And I'm like, dude, this is a miserable life. You know, our mission is creating extraordinary lives here at Erb and Young. If you want to talk about the opposite of an extraordinary life, it was me back then because that I was literally thinking, I don't know how I can function for a 100-year lifetime by doing this because this is complete torture to me. And and it was a big
Did you
wake
know
up
that you
call.
wanted to live an extraordinary life?
I didn't even know. I just knew I wanted to do something special. I remember talking to my dad and I was like, Dad, I love the track that you guys just went. I want to do something extremely special. And I remember hurting his feelings a little bit, and I didn't mean it, but he looked at me like, well, what we've done is really special. And it didn't, I didn't have an, I'm young, so I don't understand that yet because what they did was incredible, was super special. I mean, what they were able to do is amazing, but it wasn't amazing for me. It wasn't what I wanted to do. So therefore, I didn't see it as such. I'm more mature now, so I'm able to see it from a lens that says, man, what they did is really special. But it wasn't for me. So I knew I wanted to do something compelling and everlasting and something that stood the test of time and created legacy and special, but I didn't know what that was. But I did know that the track that I was going down wasn't going to get there because there was nothing special about the what I was doing, but there was more importantly, there's nothing special about the fire that I had inside. I didn't have that fire. I was like, man, I can't do this at a high enough velocity for a long enough period of time to have success. I was smart enough to know that because I just couldn't stand it, you know?
I want to. But then what's interesting and really the inspirational hustle for me is one could assume that you were making a relatively comfortable living or your trajectory of going into corporate America, the latter that we were discussing.
Mhm.
And then with the support of your two partners, you took a leap of faith and started what has now obviously everyone can look back and look up Erb and Young and see the tremendous success. But I know that there were difficult times early on, and yet I would assume
Yeah.
that you just knew and said, "I'm just going to keep hustling through this thing. And I'm just going to, we just, if we just keep pushing this rock,
Yeah.
eventually it's going to hit gravity."
Yeah. And in that decision, people were like, man, what was the deal when you guys did Urban Young? And it's the wrong question. I had made a decision before Urban Young. Right? When I tell you about that moment that changed my life when I was introduced to these core principles and mentors that opened the gates for me, that opened the door so I could see through, without, without a vision, the people perish, right? Like I had a vision at that point. At that point, someone showed me what's possible, right? They laid out the it is there for you to take. And oh, by the way, here is the component in which that will allow you to do that, which was personal development for me. So at that point in time, I was like, okay, I made a decision already. So Urban Young was just an extension of that decision that was already made. So I think that's number one, man, is like
Did you ever
Napoleon
question that
Hill.
decision?
Yes, but not wavering, not wavering, because in Napoleon Hill calls it a definiteness of purpose. Now, I may have questioned, is this the vehicle in which that gets me to that definiteness of purpose? Because as far as I'm concerned, we could sell headlights for all I care. It doesn't matter. It's the same mission. We're doing the same thing. Like that's not really what we're doing here. What we're doing is making massive impacts on people's lives and people's legacies. That's the definiteness of purpose. So to answer your question, yes, there's always is this the right way? Is this the right market? Is this the right product? Are we targeting the right audience? All those are how-tos, but they're not how you approach the house. Like the philosophy of what we had from a decision making was like, we're in this to the end. We're going to have some zigzags and changes of our model and what we do and how it looks. But as far as what we're trying to achieve, there had already been a decision on what that was. Keep in mind, I'd already been in the insurance business from the network marketing space for 5 years before we started Urban Young. And then before Urban Young, I worked for an agency for about a year and a half as a contracted producer and then came into Urban Young. So Urban Young is just an extension of that life cycle. It wasn't like all of a sudden we woke up and said, hey, we have this great idea. Let's make a decision and do Urban Young. Urban Young, before we even opened the doors, was 5 years of blood, sweat, guts, pain, no money, problems, challenges, ridicule, all the above. And then when we started the business, it still took 3.5 years for us to take a livable wage. So that's why when I get on some of these podcasts and I talk to people, they think it's like, man, it's over. It was 8 years before I made $40,000 a year. I want to say that again for your listeners. It took me 8 years to make more than $40K a year. I've been at this thing for a very, very long time. And so when I see people that are impatient, and I see people that say it's hard, and I see people that say it's tough, and I see people that say you don't get it, it's like, no, you don't get it. That's the way it looks. That's how it looks. So if you don't want to sign up for the class, don't sign up for the class. But before you sign up the class, you should know whether it takes you 8 years or it takes you 2 years or it takes you 10 years, everybody's life cycle is different, but in essence, you still have to go through the same shit. Like all of us have to go through the same fire. We have circumstances that help and hurt, but the process of becoming in any craft is the same process. I don't care if you're a professional athlete, you're aspiring to be a CEO of a corporate company, you're an entrepreneur, or you just have a side hustle on the street. It is the same process through and through, just applicable to whatever personality type you are.
8 years. So years. I know you didn't question the motive, but how did you keep reminding yourself? Was it your partners? Was it just that I know that this is what's going to make me feel fulfilled? What was the obviously you didn't pivot. So that's great. And I'm happy for that because I probably never would have met you. But it has to, at a certain point. At a certain point, when you're not making 40 grand 6 years into a business, you have to, between us, you put your head on
I could just tell you this. I went to a CPA. We went to a CPA because they were going to do our taxes. And I sat there and the CPA was like, hey, we were talking about, hey, is there anything we can do? And he looked at us straight dead serious. He said, you guys don't make enough money. Like, what are you talking about? Like, what are you trying to optimize taxes for? If you don't make more money, you're going to go out of business. And I remember sitting across the table and I looked at him and I wanted to slap this guy. I'm like, and we looked at each other and we were like, we just left this meeting and I'm like, this guy did he just say that to us? So yes, and he was right. But to answer your question, there was a lot of those conversations. And so there's two things that if I was going to give you the answer to that would be two things. Number one, it's my partners. If I didn't have my partners throughout this process, it's very likely that I wouldn't have made it. And if you're listening to this, you say, well, I don't have a partner. It is the group in which you surround yourself. It's the mastermind that you have. We are the average of the 5 people that we associate most, and we are only as strong as our support system and our environment that we choose to be in. So if you want to get better outcomes, get a better environment. If you have a strong environment that's aligned with your mission, that supports, challenges you, but is compelling you to be more, the likelihood of you to be successful in whatever craft you're doing goes up exponentially. So that's number one, was the surroundings and the environment and my partner specifically. Number two, I don't know where this comes from, probably from my parents. Even though my parents were part of the ridicule, they did not believe in what I was doing. They were out of love. It was out of love. They just didn't want me to make a bad decision. They did not support me. But early in my life, I don't know what it is, I have a ridiculously high belief in being able to get something, to achieve something. I don't know where that comes from. I don't know what that is. But the belief is it's just almost unrealistic. And so that plus environment is a heavy concoction. But and yes, there are situations where you're like, you're defeated. But on the macro, belief is something that's just, it exudes from your essence. And I don't know necessarily where that comes from. That's a question that's a fun one. I don't have that answer. But for me, I just always knew that there was going to be something big. It was just a matter of figuring out where the wheels were spinning. It was just that, when are they going to catch traction, and I was more focused on just making sure the wheels keep spinning instead of trying to figure out when they were actually going to hit the pavement.
And isn't it crazy that in those moments, when you probably could have more excuses to be lazy because things are not working out the way that they were supposed to on paper. You have more energy and more,
Yeah,
hustle in those moments than like just doing that, you know, motions thing, which sometimes yields more immediate results. You said something that you're trying to build extraordinary lives. Is that right? That's the right word.
absolutely. Yep.
If I could ask you, not you or your partners, both of whom I love, is there, and you don't have to use names, is there an anecdote of how in this journey of building Erb and Young, you've seen that? You've seen someone's life impacted, employee, client, outsider, to become just extraordinary from all your efforts?
That's a great question, man. A lot is my answer, and it's addicting. Honestly, I'm more excited and fueled today than we were when we first started. And candidly, it started with trying to create extraordinary lives for ourselves, right? But keep in mind, because of the network marketing background, it was always about creating a vehicle and a platform to compel other people to have what they want, because we learned the philosophies, the Zig Ziglar philosophy. If I help enough people get what they want, I will inherently have everything that I need. And so, but today, there are so many clues. Success leaves clues. There are so many clues that are showing up to say that what we're doing is making a dramatic impact in people's lives, that it is one of the most addictive, fun things of my entire life to be a part of. One of those examples, I'll just give you one. We have a team member um, who has tripled her income in a non-producer role, by the way. And this past week, she had the ability to buy a brand new car and help her daughter have a brand new car. And, with knowing where she came from as far as for other agencies and where she is now and what she's been able to do for her family, that to me is, and it's earned, not given. She's earned every single ounce and more. But collectively, because of an aligned mission, she is able to, she's reshaping her family tree. She's literally reshaping she's shattering beliefs. She is just making incredible subconscious impact on her kids. Um, her kids work within our agency part-time. They're 15 and 16 years old, and they're getting ridiculous outcomes. They're learning lessons. I mean, they're just becoming incredible young adults. And then there's that's just one in the last week that's just been so close to my heart. Um,
I'll tell you what's
that
amazing
just
about that
reshapes
is
the
that,
way that you view this whole thing.
and what's incredible about that is she is hustling, but the support system that's around her, the literal lighter fluid that the culture has done,
Mm,
says the same. You and I we often talk about outputs, but in the right environment, the same output can yield,
yes,
in the right, if you, the same logs, if there's lighter fluid on them, they ignite much quicker, right?
great
It's
example.
that.
Yeah.
So that same hustle for a person who puts themselves in the right environment eventually starts getting be- more exponential results for themselves,
Amen.
personally, psychologically, but then also practically and economically, which is just an incredible thing when people just stay at it and hustle
Absolutely.
towards their dreams. So
Let me give you another example, because it's not money related, because there's all different types of first of all, there's multiple types of compensation, and it's not just money, but one of the compensations is time. One of the compensations is experiences, connections, like all the above. But another example, I have a buddy of mine that I've known for over a decade. He, 6-figure guy, ran organizations of hundreds of people. He's a very compelling, very uh, impressive dude. And we've always talked about an opportunity to work together. And, he's just like, man, I'm just not going to be able to make the jump, not going to be able to make the jump, because at the end of the day, I love the insurance business because we all kind of start at the same spot. Like, it is what it is, take your ego, strip it down, leave it at the front door, come to work, get hustling, and then we'll see how good you are. And then the sky's the limit. But that's just how it works.
By the way, at least 2 years down the road.
Right. That's how it works, right?
Forget about
You know,
years.
if you want a path to unlimited, it comes at a cost. And so we have the best opportunity on the planet in this industry. I will tell you that, but it comes at a cost. There is an investment that is, you don't get return without an investment. So anyway, he wasn't able to make that investment because for whatever reason, he just couldn't see a strong enough, compelling vision to make that jump until he got to the point where he's a little bit later in life. He had watched a child, his oldest child, he was never home. He was never there on the weekends, was never there on the holidays. He was working. Those were the days that he had to work. And he was working 60, 70 hours every single week. Big pedigree, big job, big importance, big responsibility, big paycheck, but he was missing. He missed everything. And his youngest now, he made the jump. He said, we talked and he said, man, I'm done. I've got to do something else. I just can't continue down this path. And so our paths crossed again, and the opportunity came for us to work together. And he made that jump and he made that change. He was our top commercial producer this year. He's been in that seat for only 2 years, and he's still gaining traction. He's still learning it. But his activity just beats the pants out of everybody. He's just a hustler because he knows where he came and he knows what he's after. And so, but I'll share this. I had an amazing conversation with him last weekend. I was in Tampa and we're hanging out, we're having drinks, we had dinner, and he pulls me aside and he says, man, you've changed my life. And I said, well, first of all, I didn't change your life. You changed your life. And he says, no, you guys don't understand. You guys have changed this opportunity has completely changed my life. He goes, I missed every bedtime story. I missed every vacation. I missed every holiday because I was chasing this career and I was chasing this thing. And he goes, and I said, well, man, you're not even making half the money that you're going to make very shortly. And he's like, no, stop. You guys, he's like, you don't get it. It's not economics. It's not money. I know the money's coming. I could see it, obviously. He goes, but I could never make any dollar figure more than I'm making right now. And the amount of joy and freedom and time and experiences that this business has given my family is something that you will never be able to understand because of you just don't get it. You didn't have it like I had it. You didn't have it like I didn't have it. You don't understand what it's like. He's like, for that, I will forever be grateful for you guys. And people don't understand how impactful this opportunity is to have this. And dude, I was blown away. I was like, I got goosebumps right now. I'm like, dude, that is the mission. That is what we're doing. And that's
an extraordinary life.
That's an extraordinary life, and it's different for everybody. But man, it just, you talk about fuel to the fire. You talk about the gasoline. That's gasoline for me, man. So absolutely, there's clues everywhere that we're on the right track.
Thank you for. Well, there's so much to digest here. We have a closing tradition here on Keep Hustling, where we ask our guests to share their favorite inspirational quote, top of mind inspirational quote, as we close out the episode. So,
mine's been the same for a long period of time. Again, my background is team building. My background is network marketing. And I had a quote that was given to me a long time ago that changed my life, which is wealthy people build networks. Everyone else looks for work. And I believe it's a Robert Kiyosaki quote. But that shared with me early on that it's not who you know, it's how many people know of you and what is the value that you give to that audience. Because if you give enough value, you'll have reciprocated value. And that comes in time, energy, freedom, money. And so my entire career, my entire life has been spent on trying to expand my network, but expand my network with people that I can make an impact with. And so maybe this podcast reaches somebody, maybe this message resonates with somebody. I may never meet them, but they're part of my network, and hopefully I give more than I take. And if I could nail down any quote that's made a bigger impact on my life, that philosophy and that ideology has served me really well.
Brett Young, thank you. This has been Keep Hustling. Remember, do well by doing good. And of course, and always, keep hustling. All right, hustlers, that brings us to the end of another fantastic episode. Thank you for listening. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. If you have any suggestions, comments, or even just want to say hello, please feel free to reach out to us on all social media platforms. We are Keep Hustling Pod. Until next time, stay curious, stay hungry, and keep hustling.